If we look at that headline number, 22,000 looks really weak when we think about what would be replacement rate historically. However, as Powell talked about in his Jackson Hole speech, right, we have a decline in supply, that is the decline in the amount of people that are in the labor force, and a decline in demand. So that decline in the supply, which is now growing at like 0.2% year over year, if we sort of smooth it a little bit for 3 months, right? That is the denominator in the unemployment rate. And this is really, really important. We could keep growing at this pace. Unemployment rate's going to stay about where it is. So but as Ira was saying, consumption's going to weaken, because if you think about jobs growth, that's one of the things that feeds consumption growth. So there's a feedback loop where this slows consumption, slows demand, slows growth, and they're going to need to cut just to maintain that 4.2, 4.3% unemployment rate. But they probably need to cut a lot less than the market is thinking, given this shrinkage in supply. And if you ask me, that's what caused the big turnaround in equities today. People dug into the details of this number and realized, wait a minute, because of this shrinking supply, they might not need to cut as much.
So what does that mean to you? 25 basis points in September, and then that's it until 2026?
Oh, I think it's hard to know the exact timing. We think at least another 3 cuts over the next 6 months. It's going to depend on how sticky inflation is. What we've seen in core services, that's been remarkably sticky. So we're not even talking about the goods sector where we're seeing price increases, but everybody anticipates, dare I say it, it is going to be transitory. But the dirty word in economics, but it's that core good stickiness that I think, if I were a Fed governor or a voter on the FOMC, that would keep me up at night.
Ira, I mean, is Jay Powell, though, feeling incredible pressure right now?
I don't know. I'm not sure if he, but I can't get into his head, right? Cause I met Chair Powell a couple of times, but mostly in passing at events. But I would imagine that the Federal Reserve is trying to be as neutral as they can, and trying to look past a lot of the rhetoric coming out of the White House. I mean, you can't completely ignore it, right? For sure. But you look at Secretary Bessent, and if you look at his Wall Street Journal op-ed, which Mike just talked about with
Austin Goolsbee.
With Austin, yeah, they were talking about in there. There's some, I think, legitimate criticisms of what the Federal Reserve's done over the past 15 years, but it also misses some of the reasons why the Fed did some of those things over the last 15 years. Like yes, the government should be doing things from the fiscal side that back during 2007, 2008, we were waiting for Congress to do something. Congress didn't do anything, so the Fed had to step in because there was no action out of Washington. Right. So and should the Treasury Secretary be more involved? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Congress should maybe give the Treasury Secretary additional powers in times of financial emergencies and financial shocks to try and stabilize those, so the Fed doesn't have to. Right. So there and some of those were built into some of the reforms that have happened over the last few years. So it's not exactly. I agree with some of what Secretary Bessent said, and then other parts I think are much more nuanced. But nonetheless, like Fed reform. The Federal Reserve has not been seriously reformed for many decades at this point. And the world's changed, right? The financial world's changed. The markets have changed. So maybe there needs to be some type of, a shift. Now, should it be a complete overhaul? I don't think so. But right. Could there be, nuanced changes that Congress considers? Sure.
All right. One thing I want to get to, you mentioned Secretary Bessent, another key member of the president's cabinet, joined Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. We're talking about the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. He addressed reliability of the data coming out of the Labor Department. Here's what he had to say to our team.
It makes it crystal clear you should have fired the person who was running that group, right? Because if you didn't fire him 2 weeks ago, you sure as heck would be firing him today. So they need new leadership in BLS, that's for sure. They need new tech in BLS, that's for sure. And Donald Trump needs to rely upon the numbers. America needs to rely upon the numbers. You can't have these bent former administration people who have a view and who want to harm the president. We need accurate numbers coming from BLS, and finally, we'll have new leadership to deliver. You fire the person, what do you learn? You learn that their technology is just, oh boy, But we'll fix it. We'll fix it.
That was, of course, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance. Mind you, he does not oversee the Labor Department. He is head of the Commerce Department. But what we care about, Constance, is U.S. data, economic data, has been the gold standard. Is the data coming out of these departments still reliable?
Yes, I think it is. I think it's going to take. Yes, it's still reliable. And the person, by the way, who is the acting secretary, Bill Wojciechowski, he has been acting secretary in the past. He has been there a number of times. This glitch that we had, while worrisome and concerning, but is not unusual in a world of technology. Who amongst us has not experienced technology glitches? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's acceptable or that we need to not have a very high standard, but I think that is the wrong thing to attach to. And if we look at the individual who's currently leading BLS, he has had this role in the past and there have been no problems or complaints. So it is a very robust system of the way we collect data. It's very robust in how we follow up with revisions. And the reason we have the revisions we have is because we want a timely read. That timely read is 90% directionally correct, right? And so it's valuable.